Welcome to Beyond Pipeline, where we talk about how to win the inner game of sales. My name is John Habouche, and I'm your host. And today we have a very special guest. He's someone that I very much respect and keeps it very real online. He's someone that's been in our sales community and contributed to it for quite a while now. Without further ado, Anthony Natoli. My man, how are you?
Doing great. I'm excited to end the Thursday and share this space with you. It's going to be great. I love talking about inner game mindset, performance, all that good stuff. So pumped about what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, again, so grateful that you've come on, and I know that people listening are obviously really stoked to be able to listen to some of the wisdom that you have to share with us from all your experiences. I think to start off though, I'd love to just better understand like how did you get into sales? Like let's just start there. With a lot of people listening are sales leaders or just sales reps, so if you can start there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I got into sales by accident, like many people. And I think from an early age, my dad always said, you just have this natural curiosity. And it was funny the other weekend, he was saying, when you were younger, like 10, 11 years old, you would always sit at the adults table and you had at holidays, you had no problems just listening to a conversation and talking to people. And that's always been who I am. I've never shied away from a conversation. I always got a lot of energy from being the center of attention and talking to people and meeting new people. And so it's always been in my DNA. I just didn't realize that it was a path, to be honest, when I was in college. But I had my first job in high school at Best Buy, and I was in the video game section because I loved Madden and Call of Duty. I thought it would be really cool to work in the video game section. So I did, but I always found myself steering to the TV section because it was the high ticket items, people coming in looking for a TV. And without really realizing it, definitely put my sales hat on, understanding why people were trying to buy a TV, what they were looking for, what they were going to use it for, what it meant to them. And I just over the course of 6 months just fell in love with this idea of interacting with people live. Then I had to quit for baseball season and during high school, and didn't really have like a sales job until I graduated college, and I was left with a decision of what am I going to do next. And I was going to move back home from University of Arizona to do commercial real estate. I always wanted to be a sports agent, but then that wasn't in the cards. But then a fraternity brother of mine called me about this opportunity in San Francisco to work at this, fintech startup. And I was like, you know what? I made the move across country to go to the University of Arizona. Why not just take the leap and move to San Francisco and see what's out there for me? I had no idea what tech was. I had no idea what SaaS was.
Yeah.
No idea what Salesforce was. So I was going in kind of blind. And so I graduated 2 weeks later. I'm in San Francisco, subleasing an apartment, missed the bus on the first day of work, got on the wrong bus. But I got there. There was about 70 people at the time at this company, and I reported to the CEO. I was the classic, first one in, last one out, just really building this brand for myself and getting close with the CEO. And so I moved up really quickly, and it ended up being where I was basically a BDR for these account executives that were working with mortgage brokers. And so I was cold calling by hand, literally like the desk phone, no real CRM or anything. And I was cold emailing through Outlook, no cadence tool. And I had to build business acumen quick because you're dealing with mortgage brokers and they're dealing with people's personal homes on the line. And, here I am, a 22, 23-year-old kid who just graduated college, and I'm trying to figure out all the stuff. So that's when I really got into sales. And then I grew in the company very quickly because it was a startup, but was there for about 3 years. Then I took my first SDR role in SaaS. And so I was an AE, and then I went back down to being an SDR because what I was doing wasn't really SaaS at that first company. So was an SDR for 9 months, got promoted to AE, and then, the rest is history. So to sum it up, got into sales by accident. Very glad that I did. And it's taught me a ton about myself and led me down an interesting path.
Yeah, that's yeah, it really sounds like you kind of just took the leap. My path was somewhat similar. I'm curious. People see you today, obviously, as just someone that really knows a lot about outbound. Very honest, obviously on LinkedIn, have a big following, really well respected. I'm curious, what was it like for you to start out in sales when you're just like in that first 70-person company, trying to learn business acumen, trying to know how to make a cold call, doing it on like a dial phone, like yeah,
Yeah.
can you walk us through your mindset then?
Yeah. The first few weeks, I was calling people hoping they wouldn't answer. There was definitely a few times where I hung
Yeah.
up as soon as someone picked up the phone. Um, but then I had my first lick of success and I was like, wow, this feels good. I can do this. And I'll never forget working with some of the, older account executives. And these are all guys that are like seasoned pros, have been through the housing crisis.
Yeah.
The mortgage industry isn't like the most ethical industry. So these guys have seen it all. And there was this guy, Brian, who basically, and Brandon, who was my fraternity brother, they basically took me under their wings and showed me the ropes. And they basically taught me how to do sales. And they said the biggest thing that you can do is sound like you are like one of them. And so like picking up on lingo and studying the industry, and that helped me build so much confidence. And obviously like getting good feedback from my CEO really helped. But yeah, in the beginning I was like, I had no idea what I was doing. But that was the beauty of it because I was learning and making a ton of mistakes and I had the autonomy to do that. But I also knew there was a lot on the line, so I had to learn quick. And so in those early years, we talk about today hustle culture being dead. I think I was hustling. I was working till 6, 7 o'clock at night because I didn't want to leave before the CEO did. I was just like really getting after it because I was like, this is my career. I'm gonna take it serious. I think there's a big
Yeah.
opportunity for me here. So I'm gonna put in the work, even though I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And so yeah, I didn't know what the hell I was doing to answer your question, but man, that was kind of fun. It was you don't get that feeling once you know what you're doing again. And that those butterflies in your stomach, the questions that you just don't know the answer to. Um that's where all the growth was. And I think it happens to a lot of people and some people are like, I'm not cut out for this and they don't make it through that wall. Right? Like think about running where you want to give up, but you continue to push through. I think that's the coolest thing about sales. And when I started, I was able to push through that wall. And on the other side was this new version of me. And, I really think that period of my career, building that grit, that business acumen, that figure it out factor, I talk about that a lot. That has helped me tremendously in my career.
Yeah, I like that figure it out factor, pushing through the wall. Like, what do you think gave you the drive or the discipline to stick with it and like to like show up every day, really put in the work? Like, what do you think gave you the motivation to be able to go do that when other people typically fail or just stop?
Yeah, I think I've always I've always had something to prove. I always had a chip on my shoulder. And so it was never a question of if, it was just a matter of when I was going to do what I set out to do. You know, things with my biological dad and him not being in the picture,
Hmm.
things from my childhood. I always just had something to prove. And whenever I do something, I fucking do it. Like there,
Yeah.
hell or high water, I'm gonna do it. And that at that point in my life, it was very much externally driven of me needing to prove myself because there was no way that Anthony was going to move to San Francisco and be a failure and come home. Like my
Yeah.
mom would just not let that happen. She didn't raise her son to be that way. We do hard things and we see it through. And I think how that's transformed is I still have a chip on my shoulder. Like no one gets in my way. Like I'm the hungriest person I know. When I'm set out to do something, like I get that shit done.
Hmm.
But now I don't have anything to prove to anyone other than me, and I think that's been a big shift to keep me disciplined, keep me driven and motivated, and times I don't feel like doing it. But to answer your question, early in my career, I was on a mission to just be successful, and I was so hungry to like get after and start making money. And I feel like it's something that I just wasn't taught, and I was just given
Yeah.
that drive.
To what extent do you think it was? I have a theory. Like, to what extent do you think it was because you experienced maybe abnormal challenges in your childhood? It sounds like your biological father wasn't there, things like that. Like, to what extent do you think that was helpful for you? It's just like getting a little bit of
100%,
grit.
100% helpful. You know, my my little sister had gone through cancer treatment when I was in high school, and she's okay now. But that combined with my parents being divorced from a young age, and um, there was just a lot that my family went through, that I went through, that and how I was raised by my mom. Like, she raised me to have thick skin, to make it through challenges, to be confident that I can get things done. Um, and I think all of that just taught me to be gritty, to be scrappy. That's how I was on the football field in high school. Like, I was shorter than everyone,
Yeah.
but man, I was a dog. Like, at linebacker and running back. Like, I put my helmet right into your shoulder pads and run you over. And that's just like how my mom, she's from Brooklyn, Italian, short, but she's a bulldog, and I'm the exact same way. And so I think the combination of how I was raised plus the things that I went through and feeling I always had to prove myself, like, man, that was a good combo. But it got me to a point where it burned me out, and I started to put my self-worth into my performance, into relationships, into friends, into partying. And that led me down a really interesting and nasty path. And um, yeah, it wasn't always just sunshine and rainbows. It definitely ended up like biting me in the ass a bit.
Yeah. And I can share that too, where sometimes our greatest strength turns into our greatest weakness if not well managed. Um, let's talk a little bit more about. I know you're very public about some of the challenges that you've experienced with addiction, things like that. Feel free to choose, but I'd love to understand, like, what's been the greatest challenge that you've experienced in your life or in your adult life, and just like how'd you work through it? And I feel like so many people struggle with, again, whether it's addiction or losing a job or losing a family member, that really hearing it from someone like yourself that is outwardly respected really helps. So
Yeah, the most obvious one is the self-destructive behaviors and um, the result of those behaviors. And so I think I'd been gambling and having an overeating issue for as long as I really could remember. I was like bouncing up and down with weight, um, always gambling. Like high school, where I was raised in New Jersey, it was just like a thing. And so I started to make my own money, graduating college, working, um, partying, first ever girlfriend, and I went down a really just nasty path of like, I would get like a $13,000 commission check, and I'd be like, oh, I can turn this into like 20K. And I
mm,
would little by little gamble and be spending more than I can make. And then, I was in really good shape after I graduated. And then I started partying and forgetting like all the good things about the gym and my fitness, and basically all the good things in my life kind of just started to dwindle because I was prioritizing the wrong things. I put all my self worth into my performance at work and into the relationship that I was in to this other person. And that was my fault. It wasn't her fault, and I there was things that I ignored that I should have picked up on. And basically that relationship didn't end well. And there was a 2-year period after that breakup where I basically went down the self-destruction hole where the gambling was amplified. I was partying 3 nights a week. I was drinking and staying up till 4 a.m. and then brunch and drinking at the park and then rinse and repeat. I was showing up to work like it took me like 2 days to recover from the weekend and just a mess, man. And then I started gaining all the weight and I was starting to accumulate all this debt. And I'll never forget, I was looking at like my Chase account and I was like $20,000 in debt. And I literally remember debating, do I tell my parents or not? And then I decided to open up a personal, like, this is how messed up my thinking was. I decided to open up a personal loan with like Lending Club, I forget who it was, and then paid off the credit card. Then I was like, okay, I'm gonna pay off the personal loan by gambling. I'm gonna do all these parlays. This is the addictive mind
Yeah.
at work. I tried to get out of the debt that gambling got me into by gambling more. Like, it's such crazy thinking. But when you're in that moment, and why gambling addiction is such a crazy thing is because it makes you do shit like that. And so I got into another $30,000 of debt. And so I had this personal loan, and then I maxed out my Chase card again. And so I had like, I don't know, like almost $100,000 of bad debt that I was in. Chase is calling me every day because I can't make the payments, and no one had any idea. Like, I was crushing it at demand base and doing really well, and had all the friends and partying and great apartment. No one had any idea. I was just like really struggling internally. And then 2019 Thanksgiving, I think I stopped gambling for 6 months because I started going to therapy. And then 6 months, I think in August, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put like $100 on like the Yankees. Like, let me put a bet through, like, this guy at work. Let me put a bet through your account. And then after 6 months of no gambling, what do you know? I went back.
Yeah.
And 6 months before this, I told my parents about my gambling and told them I was going to be done for good. And they gave me some money to pay for groceries. And here I am going behind their back. It kills me to even think about it now. And so fast forward from August to November, that 3-4 month period, I went on absolute tear. So I was still trying to pay off all the bad debt. And now I started owing more people money, people that you don't want to be owing money to. And then I got home in November, and mind you, I'm like 60 pounds overweight at this point. I'm just like a mess. All the debt. November 2019, around Thanksgiving, DraftKings was legal in New Jersey to play. So I'm playing like hammered, drunk on wine. And I'm like I had the case of fuck it. So I'm like, how worse can it get? How much worse can it get? And then that morning, I wake up to just a knock on the door. My mom. And when my mom is angry, like, I'm like, fuck, she knows. I knew immediately. And she opened the door, went downstairs. My flight wasn't until like 8 p.m. that night. It's like 7 a.m. Went off. And here's the person that I care about the most telling me that I'm no longer a part of the family unless I get help. And I see my stepdad, who basically raised me, and he's my dad, and he's the best. I texted him. I went to the airport, and I was like, am I gonna be okay? I promise. I still have the text. I said something like, am I gonna be okay? I promise I'm not a bad person. I didn't mean for this to be like this. And man, the thoughts that I had in the airport were brutal. Thoughts that you don't want to be having. And then I landed, and my mom they made me call GA, Gamblers Anonymous, enroll in that. And then I landed, and I was like, I have two choices here. I either continue down this destructive path that I'm on, or I give myself a chance at a different life, and I attend the meeting, and I go, and I figure this out. And I did. I attended the meetings. This was December of 2019. I did them while living in San Francisco until March of 2020, and then I moved back home. And man, I know COVID was like horrible, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it allowed me to get out of my lease in San Francisco and move back home with my parents while the world was kind of on fire. And that accelerated my path to where I'm at now. I don't know. Who knows what would happen if I had to stay in San Francisco and I didn't move home. I could have went back to gambling. There's so many things that could have happened, but man, I went to those meetings. I would go Saturday and Sunday early in the morning, um, every weekend, and then I went on Zoom when I moved back home. So that's the story and the context behind the hardest time of my life. And this was, 4.5 years ago, but it feels like yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing all that context. I think a lot of people go through challenges like that and um they don't feel like they can share openly. So I appreciate you sharing so openly. I know you've probably done it before, but thank you again. I want to go a bit back. You mentioned, you felt alone, you had all this debt. Like what like can you walk through what your emotions were like and the kind of how like what your headspace was like when you were really like in it? You mentioned, you were overweight, like that you were in debt. Like, can you just walk through a little bit more about what was going through your head and like how you're weighing the decisions of, do I get help? Do I not? Like, yeah, can help us understand that?
Yeah. I think there's the version of me before I got caught by my mom, and there's the version after. So I'll start with
Hmm.
the version before. I knew I knew what was going on wasn't good, but I wasn't really ready to change. Because if I was, I would have stopped, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't ready though. Um, and you hear this all the time, right? Like you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And that's what everyone was trying to do. I just wasn't ready to drink. Even though I really wanted to, I just couldn't stop. Like the self-destructive behavior was almost a way for me to feel in control and to deal with this void that I had of not feeling good enough. Um, and that void led me down the path of self-destruction. And then there's the post getting caught from my mom. And that point, I was ready. And that's the reason I changed because I was ready and I was ready to commit. I use the phrase disgusted. I was finally disgusted with my current state and I was ready to make a change. My therapist says all the time, sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. For some people, and I'm one of those people, it had to get worse before it got better. I had to bang my head against the wall until it got to a point where my mom gave me an ultimatum for me to actually make a change. And my goal now is to try to help people not have to get to that point in whatever situation that they're in. There is this notion that it's not okay to ask for help, but it really is. Like if I had surrendered in 2017 to this idea that I can figure it out all on my own with taking the personal loan out and all this stuff, and I just asked for help from my parents and they point me in the right direction to GA. Like a lot of that doesn't happen, but I had to go through it in order, for me to be where I'm at. And so, yeah, that I to answer your question more straightforwardly, it's before I got caught, it was just a matter of me not actually being ready. Even though in my head I knew what was going on wasn't like the best. I just wasn't. I thought I could figure it out on my own. I was this like 20, 23, 24, 25-year-old kid who just thought, he's like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I don't have a problem. Like, I don't need help. In reality, I did. So, to anyone listening, don't feel like you can't be humble enough to just ask for help because we all need help at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. I appreciate the advice there too. Is I think asking for help is really hard. I've had people in my own extended family that have struggled with addiction pretty mightily. So I can definitely I've seen this unfold. I know it's not the easiest. What was it like for you when you were in when your mom, you said, hey, your breaking point was when your mom was yelling at you, right? Like, can you walk people through like what that felt like what was going on in your head, like when you reached their actual breaking point of like, all right, like I'm at my rock bottom, like can you walk people through that a little bit, just kind of getting to kind of feel like where your head was at?
Yeah, I feel like I was going to throw up. My body was numb. Room felt like it was spinning. I almost felt numb and empty because I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to fix this? I thought my life was over.
Yeah.
Like you don't just come back from being in so much debt. You don't just come back from like being 60 pounds overweight. It felt like I had to climb Mount Everest, man. Like I was like, what the hell? And I think everything hit me at once of like the consequences of my actions. You know, I know people have been through worse, but it really does feel insane to think about where I'm at now based on where I was. Like people don't people don't understand, like people don't get like how low I really was and like what a awful situation it was. Like my credit score was like in the 440s. I had no, like I was making $10,000 commission checks and they were all going away to people or credit cards. I could barely afford money for groceries. And I'm not asking for a pity party or sympathy. Like it's all self-inflicted. But man, like the self-destruction because of the simple fact that I felt like I wasn't good enough and I was trying to fill a void and had all these issues and I couldn't muster up the courage to ask for help. It's like, please learn from me. You know, you don't have to do it all on your own. Even though you like feel you made a really big mistake and you feel like it's unreversible, there's always someone that's going to be willing to help, and especially your parents. Like they're not going to turn their back on you. Um, but man, I was just so low. I was disgusted with myself. Looking back, I was like, I don't think many people make it out of that situation. To be honest, if there's like a
Probably not.
couple people out of 10, like they definitely like I know plenty of people that go into GA, Gamblers Anonymous, and then go back. Same with Alcoholics Anonymous. Like addiction's hard, man. It's like there's a reason that people struggle with it so much. And I couldn't like the easiest thing to do was to continue to lie and tell everyone everything was good. I'm going to the meetings, but I really would, like maybe I would if I went down the wrong path, I would like I'm just thinking of what my addictive mind would do. It's like, yeah, you tell people a lie and pretend everything's okay. That would have been the easy thing to do because change is really fucking hard. But man, going down that hard path led me to where I'm at today. And that's why I'm like, I have no patience for people who make excuses because I've been down the hard path. And I can kind of be a dick sometimes with my tone on this, but I want people to think and live a better life for themselves. And the amount of excuses that I hear are just bullshit because I did it. I came back from the hard, like some of the hardest shit, and there's people that have come back from harder. So like when I see people complaining or worrying about shit that doesn't matter, it like I have no patience because I've evolved to a different level of just like understanding of how the world works, and I know what people are capable of because I know what I did, and I thought I would never be able to do it. And so like I did that. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do the same thing with the half marathon. I'm just going to continue to show people that it's not rocket science. Like I'm going to go bench 315 pounds for 6 reps and build up to that because all it is consistency. And yeah, it does sound a little like David Goggin-esque, and I don't want to sound like that, but man, like people should want more from themselves, and it's
I
not
agree
that
with this.
hard.
Yeah.
And I don't have patience for people that make excuses and quit when it gets hard. I have sympathy because I know maybe they're just not ready to commit yet, but for people to hate on others for doing and going after what they want because they can't do it themselves, that's what bothers me. And then people saying like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. It's like, no, don't wish you could have done it. Just go do it. Like you get
Yeah. Stop
one short
talking.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a really one of my best friends from my childhood pass away recently from cancer. And it's like I see shit. I'm like, number one, stop hating on people and stop making excuses for yourself. Stop talking about like shit that doesn't matter because life is short. Stop caring what other people think. Stop not doing things because fear of judgment from other people that you don't even like or know. This life's short, man. And so I just think I've through this journey, and I know this is kind of a rant, I just gained a new perspective and clarity on life on what actually is important and what matters. And so I optimize my life for that. I set boundaries around that. I don't do things I don't want to do. I do things that give me energy with the people that give me joy.
So,
That old Anthony did things that he didn't actually want to do because he was trying to get validation from other people. You know how many times I went out on the weekends when I actually didn't want to, just because I thought I was going to miss out on something and people wouldn't like me if I didn't go. You know, it's like how often do people operate from a lens of fear and doing things they don't want to actually do? And like I'm just not that person anymore. I've upgraded my internal iOS, as I like to talk about.
yeah, I feel you on that 110%. Like the excuses and the holding yourself accountable and just like, yeah, um, fuck yeah, I totally agree. What, you mentioned like change and you pushing through to be able to change, and change is hard because change can be hard. It can be hard as fuck. Because I
Yes.
saw in a comment somewhere, I think it was a comment of one of your posts. I was perusing, and you said that it was like change is hard as fuck, and like no one wants to do it. Can you walk through like what your mindset is around change and maybe what your process is around change too? So I think a lot of people do get stuck and they're like, I don't want to change. They get in those repeated behaviors, right? They see the same people, have the same thoughts, have a hard time to check. Can you walk through a little about what's your mindset around change? What you've learned about it? When maybe what is your process for it?
Yeah. This is another one I have little patience on because it's hard, but it's such a simple concept. But the human mind is not built for discomfort. And I think that's the biggest problem. And so I just realized through this journey that change doesn't happen unless there's discomfort. And like the ability to embrace that and be in it and know it is the biggest thing. And I think the simplest way to make changes is to do addition by subtraction. And so let's just say someone wants to lose weight. They're typically eating too many calories. So you don't need to sign up for a new gym, personal trainer, like all that stuff's great. But sometimes it's like cut out the soda, cut out the bad carbs. And before you know it, you're in a calorie deficit and you start losing some weight. You know, I don't really like enjoy my friends anymore. Okay, so remove yourself, subtract yourself from that situation. But it's this idea of people just fall back to comfort, and that's why change is
Yeah.
so hard. And at the end of the day, we're a sum of our previous choices, actions, habits. Like there's no other answer for who we are today other than like what we've done previously. We are what we've repeatedly done and say to ourselves and or have said to ourselves. And the easiest way to make a change isn't to say that you're going to do something. It's to actually do the thing in the moment when you're faced with that decision. So if I want to lose weight, I'm faced with a number of different small little actions throughout that
Yeah.
journey. I can make the choice to eat healthy, or I can make the choice to eat, some cookies in that moment. Change comes from the ability to not eat the cookies in that moment because I've been programmed to eat the cookies time and time again. But the more times that I can not eat the cookies, the
Mm-hmm.
easier change becomes. And then before I know it, my new norm is not eating the cookies and it gets easier. So, my biggest advice for anyone that wants to make a change is number one, think about the things that you can eliminate instead of trying to add on all these new habits. What bad habits can you eliminate? And then realize that the only way that you can make a change is by like doing the thing in the moment when you're faced with the decision. Do you want to go to the gym in the morning or do you want to hit snooze? It like literally takes what it takes. Like you make the choice and you do the thing. You do that thing enough days in a row, and then that's the change that happens.
Yeah.
But every day you are either getting closer or further from your goals. And the way that is answered is through choices every day. If you don't go to the gym because you're like, I don't feel like it, well, guess what? You're now a day further from where you wanted to be. If you
Yeah.
go to the gym, even though you don't feel like it, you're now a day closer. So it literally takes what it takes, eliminate the bad habits, um, and remove your emotion from your actions. So even if you don't feel like it, you do it anyway. And have enough discipline to take rest so you don't get burnt out. So discipline goes both ways, having discipline to do the thing and then having discipline to know when you need rest. And that's
Yeah.
different than feeling like you're lazy. So change is simple, but man, like having not having the cookie in the beginning is really hard. But accept that it's going to be hard for like at least 3 months. And if you can accept that it's going to be hard, you can push through that wall. Like when I first started running, you know how many times I wanted to give up? I had so many outs. I went to the hospital and like 3 months into my training because I like overexerted myself. That was the easiest out, easiest. But I committed to a goal. And yeah, I took rest after that. I wasn't like trying to be a macho man by pushing through like going to the hospital. But like my point is we have all these easy outs. And if you can just not take those outs and just stick with it, like hiking a trail, you'll eventually get to the end of the trail. You just continue to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I again the core themes there I really liked were like take the emotions out of the action, do what it takes, do what's necessary. I think one of the things that like if I was a viewer and I was listening, and I think you and I take for granted because I feel we share this in common is like motivation's never really been that big of a challenge for me. It's just like the motivation to go and like do things. Like I've had challenges and I've had hard, but like it's never been like a harder thing. I don't know if it's wiring or whatever. I think a lot of people would go, okay, I get what you're saying, Anthony, but like how do I get the motivation or the drive to even decide to not be emotional about the decisions or to not eat that first cookie? Like, how do you help people through that and just having the drive to do that? Because I agree with you. I'm everything you say, I agree. But I think
Yeah,
that actual like discipline or drive to not eat that first cookie is a really hard thing for people.
for sure. It is really hard. I think you need to map out who you want to be. Like, who do you want to be in this life? And do those actions align with who you want to be? You know, for me, I'm not the best version of Anthony isn't the guy who goes and like takes a handful of Oreos. Like, that's not who I want to be as a dad one day. I don't want to see my kids see me doing that. And if people do that, like no judgment, that's just not me. And the best version of me doesn't skip workouts. The best version of me doesn't like isn't rude to wait staff or rude to people or short-sighted or has a bad temper. So I've mapped out who the best version of me is, and I try to live to that standard every day, whether
Mhm.
that's my values, how I talk to myself, how I talk to other people, what my routines are, what actions I take. And I think most people have no idea who they actually want to be.
I agree
And
with
so
you.
that's when it becomes really hard to know what do I actually want to do, the motivation. If you can admit to yourself that and this takes a lot of humility, man, I'm just not where I want to be, and that's okay. Let's map out where you want to go and who you want to be. What car do you drive? What's your job? Like what people do you hang out with? What do you do on the weekends? What's your morning routine? But your actions aren't in integrity with who
Dude,
you
yeah.
actually want to be. That's where the change. That's where the
Yeah.
change. I mean, sorry. That's where the motivation should come from. Is that delta, that gap of what you're doing now and who you actually want to be. And the only thing between where you are now and who you want to be is the things that you do every day. So literally, my therapist says this too. He's like, you got to play the tape forward. You keep doing what you're doing, and you have been doing, you know exactly where that road leads. If you do the opposite, well, then there's an opportunity for a different path for yourself. And so whenever I'm faced with a decision of, man, I know like this is probably going to be hard. I know it's new. If I don't go down the path, I'm still going to be in the same spot. But if I like do the uncomfortable thing, I know it's going to suck. But man, that's getting me closer to who I want to be. So that to me is the motivation. Some people want to coast through life and just be mediocre and just like go through the motions. All the respect in the world. I have no judgment, and that's like 90% of people. They they end up like regretting not going for what they want,
Exactly.
but they end up don't doing it in the moment because it's hard. They set a New Year's resolution and then they back out because it's hard, and then they just fall into old habits. I can't stomach that feeling. Like, but for some people, they just never are able to do it, and that's why like I'm trying to help as many people as I can. That's why there's Atomic Habits, The Power of Habit, all these people that make millions of dollars off these books. So people want to change. It's just really hard. But the formula to do it isn't rocket science. It's just a matter of rewiring your brain and the stories that you tell yourself. And so, again, just to sum it up and answer your question, how do you find that initial motivation? Well, it's like, man, if your life isn't up to where you want it to be, we get one life. Make it how you want it to be, and realize that whether you're motivated or not, that should be the North Star for you to live every day in alignment with that person you want to be, like that kick-ass mom or dad, that great partner, that great achievement that you've always wanted. Like, use that as the motivation and the fire. And accept that, and this is going to sound pretty morbid, but accept that like mortality is inevitable. That's what's really helped.
You're going to die.
We're going to die.
Yeah.
We're going to fucking die. And that scares me, but I now use it as fuel. Like, I don't waste time or days. Yeah, there's some days where like I need rest and like I'll turn my brain off. I'm not like on 24/7, but if we look at it through a bigger picture, like I'm getting after my goals and going after what I want. I'm taking care of my fitness and my health so I can be a great dad one day and coach my kids in sports and whatever they want to end up doing. Like, you need to have a vision for yourself, and you can start acting like that person now. You don't have to wait.
Yeah, I really like the key themes there at Pull were like, one, using your mortality to your advantage. You're going to die, you have to realize that. But then two, playing the tape forward. Like, if you aren't being the person you've defined who you want to become, like, what's the cost of that moving forward? 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. Like, really think about that. I just think that's such a powerful, those are two really powerful like lessons that you shared. So I think that's like something that people can action at home to be
Yes.
more motivated. Because yeah, man, I think a lot of people do want to change, and I don't think anyone wants to be mediocre. But I think people just, they have a hard time finding the motivation because they don't know either how to create it, how to generate it, or there's just nothing in their life that's bad enough to where they have to go push through.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is like, not everyone is in a position to afford the luxuries of like going to a nice gym or having a car to like do, like, for some people, unfortunately, it's going to be a lot harder. You're going to be at a bigger
Yeah,
disadvantage. Like, and that sucks. But I know that there's free resources out there. And man, what a hell of a story that is for someone to make it out from like a really bad situation where they didn't have the certain paid resources or ability to do certain things. But like, I also think about it, well, there's also people with like no legs that run
yeah,
marathons. So like, there's really no, there are certain situations where like people are at a super big disadvantage, and like I empathize for that. But for most people, there is a way to a different path of thinking and living for yourself, because there's people that have done it in situations like people that were raised like my uncle, like they were super poor growing up. Like, there's a bunch of people I know that were like not well off growing up, but like they made it through and are proud of where they're at in life,
yeah,
like, shit. There's people like, and we have to be grateful. There's people like that can't, that they don't even have clean drinking water. So like, when you really think about it, like, yeah, there's certain situations that are really tough, but there's always like, not to discredit your current situation, but there's always some kind of gratitude that you can have, and there's always a path to change, and it may take longer, it may be way harder, but still, again, like, is it worth it? It's probably, if you don't like your current situation, I think change is probably worth it in that case, even though it's going to be really fucking hard.
yeah. I would totally agree with you on that. Even though it will be hard, I agree. What last thing before we wrap up with the final question, I do want to talk about you had a post on upgrading your internal iOS. What is one's internal iOS, and can you walk us through how someone can upgrade it?
Yeah, your internal iOS is your current sum of stories, and choices and actions and habits that make up your current being. So think about like an iPhone, it has software. You and your brain are basically software that's made up of, the things that you do, the things that you say to yourself, the stories that you tell yourself, whether that's, I am good enough or I'm not good enough or whatever the case is. And so for most people, our internal iOS is super outdated. Like when I was 27 and still going out and partying and hanging out with the people I just hadn't updated my internal iOS. I didn't have the awareness to do it. And so I think we always have the ability to have control over the story that we tell ourselves and the decisions that we make and the choices that we make. And by doing different things, by telling ourselves a different story, a better story, I am good enough. I get to versus I have to. I am grateful versus I am resentful. Look at all I have versus all that I don't. Then your outer world starts to become a reflection of those stories. The people that you surround yourself with, the things that you do, the standard that you hold yourself to is a new way of thinking and living because you've upgraded how you view yourself. Because I previously thought I wasn't good enough, well, my actions tied directly to that. I was seeking validation from money, from girls, from things to make me feel whole. Now that I tell myself and feel that I am good enough and I do deserve love, I don't feel the need to overcompensate and need things to make me feel whole anymore. That's why I don't put work on a pedestal. So I don't put relationships on a pedestal because I know that nothing can make me feel good enough other than how I choose to view myself. And so that's what upgrading your internal iOS is all about. It's writing down all the things that you think about yourself and understanding where those things come from and realizing that doesn't have to be your story anymore. For me, I'm not that 5-year-old that's in the after school program because his parents are divorced that turns to food for comfort anymore. That's my trauma zone, but that doesn't have to be my story anymore. That 5-year-old version of Anthony doesn't have to be manifested anymore. And that's what it means to upgrade your internal iOS, breaking those old thought patterns.
Yeah.
Anthony is good enough. He doesn't feel like he's not good enough because his dad isn't in the picture and his biological dad's not in the picture. That's an old story. That's not my story anymore.
Yeah.
And that allows you to see yourself differently, and as a result, you see the world differently, and your actions will follow how you see yourself.
I love the breakdown a lot of understanding what are the stories or beliefs we have about ourselves and ourselves in the world. What are the consistent thoughts that we have? What are the actions? And just like getting clear on what's limiting you, and then going, okay, based off that, what do I need to start believing about myself? What do I need to start thinking? How do I need to start acting or move in a different direction? Right? Is really um that's a very powerful concept. I like that. The internal iOS. Um Anthony, this has been an awesome session. I'm so grateful you've come on. I could sit here and talk to you for hours if we can. There's a lot of things that I wrote down here that we didn't cover, but it is what it is. We're here. Maybe we'll do a round two one day. But regardless, before we ask the final question, where can people find you, learn more about you? You're doing a lot of great work. So yeah, can you share a little bit more about what you're doing and where people can find you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I do a very limited amount of one-on-one coaching with people on this stuff that we talked about today. Again, using my actual experience and the things that I've learned, the lessons I've learned to transform my life to help people get on that path, to be able to get to who you actually want to be, to create a clear vision, to create goals, to create those daily habits. Man, I get fired up doing that and seeing people transform. So that's like my side stuff that I work on. If people are interested, you can hit me up on LinkedIn about it.
Awesome. And again, I can feel your love and I can feel your fire. So I know you do an outstanding fucking job on that. Final question. What is if someone did not hear any of this interview and you can only give one piece of advice, what piece of advice would you give someone to take away to take action on right now?
Yeah, the TLDR is understand who you want to be and where you're at today and where's the gap? And then once you understand what the gap is, figure out what are the daily actions you need to take in order to start closing that gap. And the last one is optimize for a life that is serene, meaning that you detach from the things you can't control and you focus on the things you can by having courage. Because it takes a lot of courage to focus on the things you can and let go of the things you can't.
I like that a lot, especially the courage. I don't think I've ever heard that before. It takes courage to detach. Dude, let's end our interview on that. I have nothing else to say. We're gonna exit on that. So anyway, everyone, thank you for listening. Um, go do it. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Cool, dude. Thank you.